just eat the pop screen.
Yeah, that's the intention.
Cool.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right, kick us off.
Hello, I am Sid Heeg.
And I'm Toben Racicot.
Welcome back to the GI podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Oliver Schneider. He is one of the faculty members here at the GI, and he's also one of the lab managers, I guess, for one of the various labs we have. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. feel
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Yeah, pleasure to be here. This is the first time I've done a podcast in a long while. So with everything GI, haptics, and lab related.
All right.
So funny story. When we were coming up with the idea for the GI podcast in general, you were one of the first names on the list.
Oh, really?
It's taken us 4 years to get. So you've either been really busy or we've been really bad at reaching out. But
probably the first one. Yeah. I'm both flattered and a little embarrassed that I wasn't so available.
So we'd like to start with kind of a blanket question for all our guests. What is your earliest memory of gaming? It can be board games, card games, video games, thinking back, where did your hobby of gaming come from?
I'm sitting on that word hobby. I'm wondering if that's actually accurate, whether it's more...
If it's not, that's
could be a few other things. No, I do game. I would say... So in the context of video gaming, I remember we didn't have many video games when I was young. We didn't have the SNES or anything like that. But my siblings and I were super, super close. We received an N64 for Christmas, and of course some of the classic, Super Mario 64, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. So some of those classic Nintendo ones for the 64, and that was sort of when the video gaming started with my siblings and I. And that ended up being a bonding experience. We for years would play Minecraft to stay connected, and
that's cool.
That's interesting.
League of Legends, which was the worst way to casually stay in touch with your siblings, is dive into League of Legends every year because you could not keep up with any of the changes.
And stuff. I have some friends that play Dota as married couples, and I was like, I guess it works. If you have a full squad, but it never made sense to me that that's not a casual thing to do.
No, you really need to stay up on all the details and the new developments, right? And I do not, as you've noticed. I barely respond to emails, so.
Cool, that's fun. N64, you were not a Nintendo kid. I was a Nintendo kid. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with a Super Nintendo, and then I remember the day going to Walmart. It was Walmart. We had a Walmart in my hometown, and my brother putting his cash and coins on the counter to buy the N64.
To count out the individual
coins
and things.
Wow.
Because he delivered papers, right? So he'd get paid in change.
Oh,
and
man.
So he was like, "Here's my bills." It was the first time I saw a $50 bill was when he bought.
Oh wow,
that's so much money. And then it was a pack of toonies and that kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
That's way back in the day. That's funny.
That's a deep cut right there. That's excellent. I love it. Yeah. Do you mean just video games though? Because I haven't.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
I've competing other memory, which is maybe a little charming. I never got into Warhammer back in the day. I used to have a couple figurines that I would try and paint, and then I would fail because I do not paint. I'm not a visual artist. But I would cut out from Bristol board. I cut out these little folding figurines and draw little elves and orcs and stuff like that. And we call it the hand game because we use hands for measurement. And so since I was the oldest sibling, I would always have an advantage because my things could move farther because we'd have to standardize what hand. Very old school measurements. And so we'd have these room scale tabletop board game fights, but all completely DIY and made. So that was sort of the competing element. Again, fully on
homebrew rules as well.
Yeah, we just had our own rule set. We had we just make our custom armies, and it would be completely unbalanced. And that's how I liked it. Yeah.
That's how you liked
so
it.
cool.
Did you use that to your advantage against your siblings?
Yeah, I was never the oldest sibling that would beat up my other younger siblings. I preferred psychological warfare.
Yeah. The real meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So I guess now I think the big thing is you started this lab kind of in the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yes.
like we had this big grand opening for the Haptics Lab. So do you want to kind of go into kind of what started you on that path to get you to this point where you have this kind of lab and all of these tools and what you want to do with it eventually?
Again, with sort of the back in the day motivation, I guess. You're right. This was the softest of openings for any sort of lab. We still haven't had an official registered training program for it, but we do train people. We are safety first. So Yeah, I work in haptics. I work in physical user interfaces. And so to do that, you need to have a lab. You need to be able to, at bare minimum, rapidly prototype and sort of hack together random solutions, not random, but like new hardware solutions. And at best, be able to come up with custom haptic devices, alternative controllers if we're thinking in a gaming context. Being able to create that custom hardware gives you a lot more power over what you can do. And even if we're not, like my lab tends to focus a bit more on the experiential level. So we do a lot more software and computing and machine learning and data science side of haptics, which is a bit of our niche. You still need to interact with these tools to be able to rig up a display. So if you want to create some sort of custom tactile feedback, so vibrations you feel in the skin, you need to solder on these transducers to some sort of power source. You need to have some way of connecting it to an Arduino. And to do that, you need a lab. And that's what we have.
Nice.
Yeah.
So where do you want to go in the future, like with this lab? Because it's still, it's kind of feel like it's still in its young stages. So it can kind of like go in. Where do you want to eventually get to lead to a certain point?
Right. So I care about impact, and I want to have the biggest impact I can with my research. And my students tend to see that in a different couple of ways. The big way that we're trying to push for impact right now is scaling up haptics. So I'm a computer scientist by training, but I also minored in stats. And so I have a bit of a data-y, I'm a masochist. I have a bit of a data leaning and a bit of a sort of computational abstraction lens that I view my work through. And so haptics is really challenging because we have, this amazing diversity of different devices. So you might be familiar with the vibrations you feel in your smartphone or in a game controller. The PS5 that we have in the living room lab is it's really quite compelling. It's at least got some sort of force feedback trigger. But this is just scratching the surface of what haptics can do. If you go to the haptics conferences, we've got vibrations propagate. Like you would have one transducer or kind of an array on a table, and you could create arbitrary waveforms anywhere on the table.
Oh, wow.
So wherever you touch, you see there. You've got mid-air haptics. We have a couple of those devices in the lab that project it at a distance. So we're working with that a little bit. Thermal feedback, force feedback, giant exoskeletons, rehabilitation. Like all of this, it's so diverse.
Yeah.
And yet in commercial spaces and in polished experiences like we get with gaming, we tend to only see vibration. This new trigger is like the barest minimum of force feedback. Or like simulation, like you've got like pedals and like race car controllers and steering wheels. So that kind of force feedback, which is really the only mature technologies. And my goal is to take all of these other experiences, which we really need to have this rich experience of touch, and move it to a place where people can actually gain benefit from it and experience it in games, in interactive media, to tell stories with it, etc. So everything we do is kind of in that direction. How do we support haptics for everyone? How can everyone create experiences? How can everyone experience those experiences?
So what do you think what have you found is one of the main hurdles for that? Is it because the technology is still kind of bulky, like to get a more rounded experience, right? Like my first experience or exposure to haptics was the Rumble Pack in the N64, right?
Classic.
And like that in of itself was like a special add-on. It wasn't built in back in those days. And it was small and it did its job. But to get kind of more, perhaps an immersive experience through haptics, do we need to be having like pods that we go in and like that kind of stuff is more like built into that kind of stuff? Or so what kind of hurdles do you expect to, or are you facing in developing this kind of stuff?
Right. So at the end of my PhD, the kind of capstone paper that I wrote was basically haptics is hard, and here's the list of reasons why.
Okay, perfect.
It's things that lots of people knew kind of informally, but we wrote them down. We interviewed hapticians, people who make haptics, and we kind of cataloged them and really characterized the challenges facing the field.
Okay.
And some of the big challenges facing the field are that it's hard. Like you have to deal with everything from the context of use. So, are you touching it with your finger? Are you touching it with your hand? Is it on your back? All of these are perceptually different. Are you walking versus sitting down? You have different level thresholds of being able to detect even whatever kind of stimulus it is. Then you've got the hardware. Like it's can be very bulky. It can also be very finicky. You have to tune things up. If it falls out of whack, it doesn't like the engineering that goes into like the phantom force feedback devices. You've got all of these carefully tuned springs and capstan drives, and like if you tear it apart, it's amazing the level of engineering. It takes like 10 years to go from like a prototype that kind of works in the lab to that. So it's difficult mechanically. Then you have the hardware level, the software level, and that needs to communicate with like visual feedback, audio feedback, and haptic feedback. All needs to coincide all at once. And then you have to design it, and that's really hard. And so no one tackling this haptic experience can handle more than like one piece of it. So you need to have these really diverse teams that handle all of it and also know about haptics. So that's one thing we're trying to push forward in the Can Haptics training class, which is a graduate level class that we offer in the winter. Shameless plug. Yep. Contact me if you're interested. We're really trying to drive forward to this new way of getting diverse backgrounds to interact with haptics, because we have lots of mechanical engineers, lots of programmers, but even they have a hard time interacting, and that's all STEM backgrounds, right? So where are the designers, where are the stuff? So you got this really complex set of things they have to do, and then on top of it, it's expensive, and we don't know. It's hard to measure how good that is. So the cost-benefit ratio to justify that effort and that cost is never really there. And so those are kind of the big challenges facing more diverse and rich haptic experiences in commercial devices.
Okay. Yep. I have a follow-up.
Okay.
Can I do a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So the other notable haptic experience in my brain, I think I was a young teenager and I went to what was it called? Universal Studios. And they had like the Shrek 4D experience.
4D.
Right?
Yeah.
And really it was just you wear the glasses so it was in 3D, and then like your chair would move and you get puffs of air in the face. So have you come across, perhaps like out of academia or out of the industry, that haptics might have some kind of stigma of like, oh, it's just a gimmick because of those kinds of things? Like, is that a struggle that you deal with too, to be like, no, there's value to it, and it's more than just like theaters can charge an extra $10 to have like a wobbly chair or something like that?
Yeah, so I have a couple of responses to that. Often it can be a bit of a gimmick. And I remember very poignantly being I went to grad school at UBC. So in Vancouver, I went to the aquarium, and the 4D experience there, at one point they have like this spiky pufferfish on the screen, and it just pokes you in the back. It's just like this little like solenoid just like jabs you, and it sucked. It is like standout one of the worst haptic experiences I've experienced. And I'm just like, why would they do that?
Right.
So, but the thing about 3D is it was a gimmick, right? Like back in the 80s, you'd have like, I think SCTV has a great clip where they're like showing a pizza and like, whoa!
It was always, yeah. There's always something coming through the screen at that point.
Yeah, but when I experienced, like, I went to go see Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, and yeah.
Great.
But so in defense of that film, it was 3 hours long, terrible characterization, and a rehashed plot of Pocahontas, right? But it didn't feel long at the time. And there's a point where like an arrow goes through one of the helicopters, and I was like, whoa. And so there's kind of 2 points here. The first is I felt like the subtle use of that 3D really did help me get immersed in something that I probably wouldn't have been as interested in otherwise. So I actually think technologically and maybe from like a execution point of view, that part of the movie was quite good. So that was kind of interesting because that subtle feedback really, really helped. The other thing that helped was that I thought that movies that I saw that were created by 3D, even if you see the 2D version of it, like you just ignore the gimmick of 3D, directors seem to have more of an eye for depth. So they really do. And again, I'm not a media studies, so you can tell me whether you agree or disagree or if I'm way off base here. But my impression is it kind of changed the way people thought about it, and it let us have this richer experience. And I think haptics the same way, right? You don't want to notice the haptics in any sort of experience. If you do, it's pretty much all over, unless it's giving you information, like you're doing surgery and you need to feel it.
Yeah.
But in an experiential point of view, you want to typically not know it's there, but if you turn it off, you want to be like, it's dead, I need it back. So that's the trick we do when evaluating haptics or persuading someone that it's useful. Is we let them interact with it. Like, okay, sure, that's fine. We turn it off. They play around with it like, wait, what's going on? Put it back on. Yeah. And that's when you know you've succeeded.
Oh, interesting. It's like in terms of like when we're talking about media, what I usually talking about like in terms of like good or bad media. Bad media is like when you can see things moving behind the curtains, essentially.
Yeah,
and
like
watching all the pieces come together. Sometimes I like that experience, but sometimes in the case of the Avatar, of just not noticing it, but it would the experience would definitely be lessened if it wasn't there. And trying to toe that very fine line, especially since like the things that we've discussed about is you have a lot of this technology that is kind of hard to bring in. Sometimes it's pretty bulky. So kind of how do you bring that and enhance the experience that's already there in a subtle way? So, yeah.
Yeah, and that makes it really challenging then, because if you have this new technology, you want to put it in the forefront. You'd be like, check out what this, look at this movement chair. You can like feel cool things with the D-Box experiences or whatever. Which my big professional shame is I've never actually sat in a theater with the D-Box.
I never have either.
Yeah, but I work in haptics.
So it's like especially bad for you.
Yeah,
that's like me saying I've never played D&D as I study role-playing games.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So. So like it's so hard to spend like oodles of money, arrange these giant, very specialized, highly trained teams to create these experiences in the first place, and then have it be like barely noticeable. Which is why, so that's one of the real cruxes of not leading to richer experiences. So what we're doing in the lab right now is we're trying to, and I told you I have a bit of a data science leaning right now. We're trying to understand and define what haptic experience is, like what makes a good or compelling experience, and then find a way to measure it. So come up with like a UX questionnaire, but for haptic experience, so that people can start to really focus on things that feel good or don't feel good and why, rather than just, we added haptics, there you go, it's better. To see if we can get at some of those subtle differences. And but yeah, it's challenging, but
yeah, no, it was very interesting because I was at an exhibition a little while ago at the Ken Sealing Waterloo Region Museum. It's for Debajamoan, which is this multimedia exhibition, and part of it is representing Indigenous experience, Indigenous histories, but they also had a digital representation of a ceremonial fire. And a friend and I were saying how cool would it have been if they had included some sort of like haptic technology to actually feel the heat of the fire, so how much of that would enhance it, especially for people who are visually impaired, of just trying to add another multi-sensory experience to it. So
yeah, the idea of doing that's encoding it in multiple senses, especially if you don't have access to one of the senses, like that's huge to be able to really enrich the experience, reinforce it, and then open it up to more people. Like that'd be really cool.
Has any of your research kind of like touched on that in terms of like working with people who have disabilities in that kind of sense?
Yeah, so my postdoc work worked on with Dual Panto, which is a force feedback device that enables people who are blind or visually impaired to be able to play a real-time video game. So the idea is most of the time when you have a display for someone who's blind or visually impaired, it's sort of like this scanning turn-taking thing, right? You hold a Wiimote up, and then it vibrates if you're pointing towards some bowling pins, and then you know you're aiming correctly. So you kind of have this like you query response. So it's not it's not really tightly real-time interactive, right? It's cool, but it's like it's only turn-taking games. It's not real time. What Dual Panto is and I do have one version of the device here, but I don't think I can make it run right now. You've got two handles, and each of your hands goes on that handle. They're in a plane, so they're kind of on top of each other. I'm making the hand gestures, and no one can see it. And one of them is the me handle, so you can kind of walk around and control yourself in a space. So you can push around, and if you hit a wall, you get force feedback, etc. So you kind of control and have agency through that one. The other is like an it handle. So it's a target. So it could be like a soccer ball in the soccer game. It could be an opponent if you have the soccer ball. If it's a first-person shooter, you could like track an enemy and then point towards them and aim, and then you could like feel if it hits them. And so you can do all of this where you can have this really tight interaction loop where you don't have to wait around and like do an action and then wait and see. In real time, kind of streaming, you can start strafing while someone is shooting at you to dodge them and aim at them and shoot back, and then they can kind of dodge around. And there's other applications outside of gaming, right? You can do any sort of real-time manipulation applications, and there's a bunch that have been developed to kind of show this off. But yeah, it's really kind of making it this tight interactive loop. So yeah, so I've worked with blind and visually impaired users or people who are blind and visually impaired, and a couple other accessibility related topics, but I'm hoping to dive more into that in the future.
Especially since like accessibility, especially within video games, is so topical because everything has to be in some way accessible, and accessibility features are like to be expected at this point. So yeah.
So you mentioned that your academic background is in computer science.
Correct. Yeah.
So where did the exposure to haptics come from, and like what was the hook that made you go, okay, yeah, I'm gonna make this kind of a focus rather than whatever computer science was at the time, or like what got you started on that, right? I guess
way back in the day, yeah. So this is a two-part answer. So in high school, for a independent research project as part of my high school program, I built a foot pedal. Okay. And this foot pedal was the clunkiest device ever. Like I had extremely limited hardware skills. Even now, I'm definitely a software data design person. But I've now can manage enough to work in haptics. But in high school, so I made this pedal. And the idea is just you're typing an equation, like a scientific equation, you need to superscript or subscript, and you can just like tap down the pedal and you can like, it'll like jump up to superscript or jump down to subscript or whatever. Okay. So the idea being if you're interacting with a computer, your feet are sitting there doing nothing, but you've got so much room for adding some extra features there. So I wanted to make, scientists and teachers' jobs easier. So I built this sort of physical user interface, and I evaluated it, et cetera, and did a review of computer independent devices. So as early as high school, I was touring HCI labs and working with physical user interfaces. For a while, I resisted HCI because I had the foolish notion that it wasn't, technical enough. There was a bit of that, CS engineering like machismo going on. Not that I describe myself as someone who's full of machismo, but I wanted like that technical. I love linear algebra and breaking down those equations and diving into the math of it. Again, minor in stats and math for some reason. So I resisted that. I did some HCI work in my undergrad, some programming languages research, and some numerical computing stuff as well.
Where'd you do your undergrad?
Saskatchewan.
No way. Which university?
University of Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay. I'm from North Battleford.
Oh, cool. So
right down the lane. That's funny. Are you from Saskatchewan then?
I kind of. Okay. Yeah. I went to high school and undergrad there, but I lived in Kingston before that. My parents went to Queens, and then Dad got a faculty position in computer science at Saskatchewan.
No way.
I took all the way out to the prairies.
Yeah, he's a prairie boy, so we kind of moved out there, and then he was teaching computer science. I studied computer science, so I took software engineering from him.
Okay.
And I won't comment on how well I did in that course, at least not on a podcast. So that's sort of the early answer. So that was part of why I was able to get this early exposure to HCI, and I felt drawn to physical interaction and multisensory. So I also worked a bit with audio synthesis and how that would work in a groupware application. That was one of my first papers. My first paper. Working with Carl Gutman out there. So then flash forward to when I'm looking for grad school. I went out to tour a couple places. I looked at Waterloo, and I looked at UBC, but UBC had someone who did haptics, and I loved it because it had the people involved with HCI. Mm-hmm. So you had to think about people, and I'm all about interactive systems. I don't really care about building the latest, greatest, fastest algorithm from a CS point of view. Right. I want to build something that's interactive. That's where the challenge and the interest relies, and the chance to have an impact. At least how I want to. And it had some of that extra kind of meat of like computer graphics and stuff like that. So you can get technical, you can get very human-y, you can do all kinds of things with it. And I just, again, felt compelled to break the computer out of keyboard and mouse and screen. I think it can be so much more, and this is the way that I can do that. And then to sort of really seal the deal, when I took the haptics course from my supervisor, Karen McLean at UBC, one of the assignments was to tune this like haptic knob. So you may like click into different ways or have like a spring or like a wall. And every time we did that, we had this like big long C program that you had to recompile, and you had to like change all these elements. It was like the clunkiest thing ever. And you're trying to design. You can't design with this long interaction loop, right? It's like you're trying to create a graphic design, like, instead of working in Photoshop or Illustrator, you queue up Illustrator and then there's code. You type the code, you wait 2 minutes for it to compile, and then you see the thing move a bit to the left.
The old days of CGI
the very old
graphics,
day of like CG graphic, computer graphics, and But it's even more subtle because you really got to feel like, does it feel right? No. Okay, I'm going to go change this concept by 0.1. Does it? Or like hack in like a slider. Like it was the worst. Like you couldn't make something feel good. You can make it work, but you couldn't make it feel good. And it needs to feel good if you're going to have this polished, subtle experience.
Yeah.
So then my research agenda became, how can we make this easier? This is too hard. We need to make it easier and enable more people to be able to do it.
That's cool.
And then because I'm a computer science person, my goal for my PhD was to create a programming language for haptics. We found out we did not have enough information for that. So instead, we settled on design tools. So it's sort of like a Photoshop or Adobe Suite, but for touch is sort of like where the bulk of my work has been.
That's interesting.
I love the idea of the foot pedal. Because you're right. We use our hands, our feet are...
Right?
It's so interesting. So my mom, she is an organist. So she uses her feet all the time.
Yeah.
But because of that, when my family's buying a new car, my dad decided to get a Standard. And my mom was like, yeah, I could drive a Standard. And because she already knows how to use her feet really independently of her hands, that she figured out how to drive a Standard in no time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say, I'm a drummer, so I have like the same kind of experience. And so I did some interviews, like podcasts, and I had to do transcriptions. And I don't know if you know this, but there's transcription tools where you have pedals that let you slow down, speed up, go backwards without having to like manipulate the audio with your hands, so you can just keep typing. So I immediately thought of that. Like, there's a niche for that already, but like, what is the greater, like, what broader audience use for something like that? I think there's so much potential for something like that.
It's also just like, especially since most of our lives are now online, so also how do you factor in like considerations of health or trying to get people move while they're sitting at their desk as well, to keep them stimulated in some ways, because I know that's like a big issue of like, we're all sitting at the computer for like 10 hours a day or more. What does that do to the body?
I'm already just thinking, like, if you're playing a first person shooter and your thumbs are on your joysticks, rather than taking your thumb off to hit like a jump button, you just have a pedal that's like, okay, I'm gonna jump with
like
my
the
feet.
bumper jumpers, but bring it into your feet.
Something like that, so that you're making use of all the appendages and things like that.
This is exactly what we did with dual panto for the for the soccer game, and actually for the first person shooter. Your hands are on the dual panto to know where things are.
Okay.
So if you want to shoot, you tap the pedal, and if you wanted to, if you're dribbling the ball in the soccer game, you tap the pedal because it's your foot, right? And it kicks the ball off.
Okay.
So it's it's just extra room for interaction, and there's I think a really rich space there.
And especially because with like Bluetooth being, more standardized now, right? I'm thinking back to the N64 when the driver wheels for Mario Kart and stuff came out. Your living room was just like a maze of cables, right?
Yeah.
And now we don't have to worry about that. So we could have that kind of stuff in people's living rooms, right? And especially with the proliferation of VR devices, like that stuff is more common. You're not just having a console and a controller, but you're having more of the add-ons and blah, blah, blah. So like a foot pedal with something like that, I think isn't too far out of the realities of like, here's the Sony pedal, here's the Xbox, right? Whatever.
The Xbox pedal.
X pedal.
Whatever it could be.
Spell 5. Yeah. I would love to see how they marketed like a standard like a same thing like you see like a piano pedal or like a sustain pedal, like it's the Xbox
pedal.
The play pedal.
Yeah. I mean, they already tried to. Well, I mean, the closest we ever got to obviously was like with the Rock Band set. They actually have the drum set. That was actually quite a challenge, I remember, because I'm just like, oh, this is so much more to consider than trying just to strum the guitar along. Okay, so I have a question. So I had briefly seen that you had interned, I think, sometime after your PhD at Disney Research. And I'm always kind of interested in seeing where people go before they either come back to academia or when they go into industry. So what was kind of like your experience during that whole thing?
Right. So it was amazing. I have to say, like, opinions of Disney as a company aside, working
That's
there.
a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Working there, especially in the research wing, was incredible. It was basically like you got to play. Money was no object. And the thing is, they really cared about design and human interaction and the psychology of things. So they had, like, I was sitting there. The person next to me is now one of the really prominent person in HCI, doing some really cool machine learning sensor stuff. With sort of mobile devices. So he was like doing some really cool engineering HCI. The person to my right was a nutritionist. And so, yeah, people are like, what's a nutrition just working for Disney Research? Well, because people go to these parks, right?
Yeah.
And the goal of Disney is they're selling, well, in this case, they're selling an experience, right? You go to Disneyland because it's an amazing experience. You have this this wonderful time, and you got to eat while you're there. And often people are there on vacation, right? So they want to like splurge and eat sort of their feel good food, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to eat too healthy. But if they don't eat healthy, they're going to feel gross.
Yeah.
Right. And so you want, like, how do you keep people hydrated? How do you let people eat like their junk food, but also like somewhat healthy food so that they feel good? Like they've thought through everything at the parks. They think through the lines that you don't realize how long they are. The lines tell the story. Like the craftspersonship at play in these parks and in their experience. Like they really take pride in their work. And so that's something that felt good being there, is that they really do care about telling good stories, and taking and people felt like they took pride in being a part of the company. So that was really, really cool. And we had like talks about how they designed, I think, the Hong Kong park and like the challenges there and like how they create an experience but they tell the story differently. And so it was like this really interdisciplinary area. It's a place where you could really just kind of work on cool experiences, and doing high quality polished work was appreciated. And so it was a really cool place to be. Yeah.
Is there anything like very specific that you worked on during your time there?
Is it all NDA'd?
No, it's that we published. It was like it's basically like an academic lab, right?
Okay.
In fact, both of the papers from that summer internship were in my thesis in some shape.
Cool.
Oh, cool.
So one was tactile animation. So I mean, they have the IP for it, they have the patent, but the idea there is they had this array of vibratactile transducers, so vibration things on your back. We actually have a gaming chair that was from Disney Research, the Avengers. You can't buy this thing. It is like prized. It's worth its weight in gold. Researchers have tried to buy my like two of these custom chairs.
They just come to you and being like, please let me buy this.
Well, because like I'm at a conference and we're talking, but they have a demo with two of them. They're like, I need more. Are you willing to sell yours? I'm like, I only have two and one's broken. I can't, because they don't manufacture this thing. It was a commercial flop.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
This gaming chair, but it was a research gold mine. And so it's kind of like how the Kinect took off for like a small set of people. It was like this is like the chair. So it had this like a bunch of different sort of speaker transducers. So these vibratactile transducers on your back, they can vibrate. It creates a sensation, and so you can have like a rumble effect if you're like crashing in like Mario Kart or whatever. Yeah. But it's really hard to design for that. You had to kind of code it. So we made two different experiences. One was called Feelcraft, which we have a demo of in the lab. It's Minecraft, but you can feel it. And you feel
fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. You feel rain on your back. Yeah, I together with like one or two other people there, I designed that.
Okay, very cool.
And so we you feel rain on the back. You feel like a gallop underneath your butt as you're kind of like riding a horse. If the TNT goes off, you feel this giant rumble.
Yeah. So
that was a ton of fun. That was my job, was building and designing that.
That is fantastic.
And then making it so you could customize it too, so that people could like tune it. The other project was this tactile animation project. The idea being, okay, so that's how you can tune an experience, but you still need someone who could design and code and new haptics to create it. Can we just make an interface for someone to drag something around like you can in Premiere? And like we built a prototype of that and studied it. And so we had visual animators. Like the cool thing is they had like a whole like animation wing, and so you had like the like at any time 6 to 8 like either professional media study like animation students sitting there like doing an internship, and so you could just get them to animate and draw stuff for you, which is great because, as discussed, I'm a terrible visual artist. And we had them come in and play with this tool that was basically Premiere, but for this vibration on your back.
Yeah.
And yeah, they could just design these effects for like whatever stimulus we wanted. So we have this like, it's kind of like, yeah, like a Photoshop or in this case, more like a Premiere, because it was like an animation tool, but for touch. And we had to do some somewhat complicated psychophysics to figure out like where the vibration is, because if you have 3 actuators, you got to interpolate between them. So we had to break out some fancy computer graphics stuff to do that. It's actually not that fancy for computer graphics, but it was still algorithmic. So yeah, those are the 2 projects I worked on, was Feelcraft and this animation tool, so that visual animators could then create haptic animations. Yeah.
So I think it's really cool that Disney would have a wing where they. I didn't know that Disney research was a thing, so that's cool. I learned something very significant today. Do you feel that haptics is getting the attention it deserves outside of perhaps academia, or even like outside of the gaming industry, or maybe even in the gaming industry? Do you feel like more should be done to focus on new experiences and development?
So haptics faces one of the other challenges we haven't talked about with haptics is that people don't really know what it is and what it can do. And that's, again, one of the things we're trying to solve in the lab right now. We've created this new process. It's currently under review, so I'm not going to name it. But this idea of, if someone doesn't understand haptics, how can they know what they want? So if you're a storyteller or a designer or a developer, you want to add haptics to your VR experience. Like, how do you know even where to begin? And usually the way you do is you talk to a haptician, you go into a lab, and you play around with all these devices, and that alone is hard and tricky to do. So yeah, that's a major barrier is just this lack of awareness. And so people don't know what they don't know, and it's hard to get them started to work with it. And so when you think haptics right now, people think, oh, vibrations in your smartphone, the Apple's, AHAP files and their Haptic engine, which is quite good, but still only vibrotactile. So that's kind of the extent of it right now. But, I cheered when I watched Ready Player One, and there was this line where someone says, "Nice haptics, bro." And I was like, yeah, like the word haptics is actually out there. Like, this is it. It's our time. So it's slowly, like, it's become a lot more popular in the past 5 to 10 years. Like when I started my PhD, it was kind of like haptic devices are coming out and they're going to be big. Like, there's all these startups that are starting to move stuff to products. And right now we have there are dozens of startups that have their own custom haptic devices and even their custom haptic software, which was new because that was all in research labs 10 years ago. So we're at this really interesting time where we see active commercialization of a lot of new, richer haptic experiences, but we don't know, but they're not quite making it to that scalable, like they're not making it into everyday commercial devices.
It's very, very niche.
It's still pretty niche, yeah. The couple are starting to break out and starting to get integrated into like automotive has some applications there. Obviously in medicine, like surgery training, remote surgery, stuff like that, that's been a huge field as well. But again, very specialized. And so you have this trade-off of like a generic haptic device, something like a vibrotactile controller that can do anything but do it poorly, kind of, or like just does buzzes, is very limited, to like these really hyper-realistic simulations, which has been around for decades, but they're not... They only do one thing really, really well. So like it's a specific kind of laparoscopic surgery, and that's what this device does. You build a whole like room for that, or like a big like device. And so the thing that's happening now is, can you have something in the middle? Can you have something that's a little bit more diverse but still kind of rich, or can you take those really niche applications, kind of bring them to be a little bit more generalized? And so we're kind of seeing a lot of products and a lot of research push that way. And I think that'll percolate down to commercial products in like, hopefully like 5, maybe 10 years. Again, like it's happening, but it's like there are lots of dev kits. There aren't like products that people buy for their mass produced devices. And that's sort of where we've gone from research labs like 10 years ago to mostly dev kits right now.
Yeah. Especially since, like, when we're talking about video games, it's all still contained within the controller. So it's like, really, what can you do with, like, buzzing here and there, or, I always hear so much about the PS5 controller and how good it is, but that's like, it's still just limited to that, because then you have to start considering, bigger equipment, but not everybody has the space or the need for that type of equipment or experience. So, I remember when VR was coming out and people were like, oh, this is going to be like the next big thing for gaming, and it really hasn't. It's still very, very niche, so it kind of just never materialized in the way that they were first saying it. So it's going to be I think a bit of a grind. I think we're going to see in the next 5 years we'll probably see a couple new, like probably some of the big consoles will adopt 1 or 2 new kinds of haptics. So you might get like some sort of texture feedback, or you might get something like that. Or maybe a really good glove finally that can like really be
I was going to
used.
bring up the power glove,
power glove. I mean, people have been building gloves for like 30 years now, right? 30, 40? Power glove was like late 80s, right? Yeah. So like 35, is that actually?
Somewhere around there.
Woof. So so I think we're gonna see like some instances there, but like it'll be kind of like we'll have a new controller or a new kind of device, and then it'll get streamlined to like a bit of a niche market or use, and then a couple other ones will pop up, and eventually it'll start building. I think like 10 to 20 years we'll start to get more generic or richer devices that can do multiple haptic feedbacks, because their sense of touch is like actually like, depending how you count, like I'll start with like 6 or more senses, and that I picked 6 as sort of an arbitrary lower bound, depending how you want to break down the mechanoreceptors and other sort of receptors.
Yeah. Have you played around with the Xbox or the Microsoft like accessibility controller? So instead of having joysticks, they just have like the pads. And I believe that is a venue that could be played with. So instead of having a joystick, you'd be touching essentially a trackpad, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you're walking through like sand, it's like harder to push. Like that's I know that's an experience already, because I did a study with one of your students, and I remember who it was. And that was one of the experiences where like you put the pen in the thing and you feel like the tension because you're going into like the cylinder and it feels weird. But again, is that something that's like mass people are going to be like, yeah, I want to have that kind of experience, or are they just going to stick with what they've been playing since, ever? Like it's tricky to know kind of what the desires of players are, or the mass public.
It is really tricky, and I don't like the killer app for haptics doesn't like, again, it's a lot of it is polish. It's like subtly increasing user experience, or it's giving you information that you need to do, again, rehabilitation or surgery or to complete a certain task, right? So it's subtle, and that's why I don't think there's going to be really a revolution. It's going to be like things will just kind of pop up, and slowly it'll kind of build to be a much richer ecosystem in 10, 20 years. But the idea, like the accessibility, like I think that the approach of the accessibility controller, because that's very customizable, right? Yeah. That's going to be essential, is personalization and customization. One thing that's very poorly understood, it's known very well that there are individual differences between how we all experience touch, is everything from just like what we perceive to like how our attention varies. And there's a couple different models of how people vary, but it's not well understood. And again, that's sort of one thing that we're looking at in the lab is how can you understand how like I experience touch versus either of you, right? And then how can we customize it to that? Like one of the first things that D-Box learned on their motion chairs is you have to have like a haptic volume knob. Yeah. And that's the bare minimum, is you have to be able to turn it up or down, right? And then like your iOS device or any device has the ability to turn your haptics from strong to medium to light. Because that will vary by person, and probably vary, like if someone's new to it, they might want it really strong. It's like, oh, this is really cool. And then it becomes too much, and then you want to dial it down because you become a little more attuned to it. And then, the idea of how that experience over time changes is really tricky. So this customization and adaptable interface approach of something like the accessibility controller, I think is going to be essential to haptics making any traction into actual commercial devices.
I love that. I don't play games with vibration settings. I always turn them off.
Really?
Yeah. I hate them.
Oh.
Is there a reason why?
Typically, it's immersion breaking in this. Okay, so I'm a very strange gamer. I have to give you like a couple other parameters. So sure. I don't play games listening to game audio.
All right. Yeah.
So typically it's like if I'm playing on my computer, I have the game on one screen and I have like Netflix open, or I'm rewatching Frasier or Seinfeld or something, or listening to like audiobooks or podcasts. Because as a teenager, I couldn't just be playing a game. I had to do more so that my parents would be like, oh, you're also taking in like a book, or right? I had to make it kind of
trained.
Yeah.
And so vibration, because I'm not hearing the game audio, all of a sudden, a buzz. I'm like, well, I don't want that. And it's really loud. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's distracting from the other thing that I'm using to kind of distract myself from the gameplay. And it's never, basically since the N64, because I remember we bought, it was Star Fox 64, and that's what came with the remote pack. And that was actually something that added the immersion to it. But by then, with the kind of games that are coming out now that I play, right, it's like there's explosions going off and I'm shooting and all this stuff, and it's like almost constantly vibrating, and there's not really any moment where it's not, because if like the decisions, I guess, are like if any kind of action is happening, it's vibrating. But then there's even moments where like I'm platforming and I'll fall a little bit too hard and I'll vibrate from that, and I'm like, I don't really need that kind of impact. So for me, it's a distraction. It's not something that actually puts me back in the game.
I mean, if you're turning off audio, you're almost certainly going to turn off vibration, right? Audio, because vibration is very closely linked to audio for kind of obvious reasons, right? Like that's why Apple like literally has AHAP files, audio and haptic files. You make them together so that they're synced up and buffered in the system so that they actually can synchronize. Because I felt early versions of the Apple Haptic, like some of the feedback that they had, and like they couldn't quite get the sync up right, and like the fireworks would just be like it'd be off by like 20 milliseconds, and it would suck. Like it's like it was like this uncanny valley where it's so close to being so good and it just wasn't quite there. So they synced everything up and it works really well. Yeah, so yeah, there's I could see why you would then turn that off for sure. And if it's constantly vibrating, like that's the worst thing you can do, right? Like it is a lot about subtlety.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about your gaming habits as a kind of closeout. Do you still play games?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What kind of things do you play?
So I am a glutton for punishment. Okay. So I don't play too many games. So I tend to play more like either indie or like anything that I know is going to like be worth my time. Like if it's like a really good 10, 20 hour game,
okay.
I'll play through it. And I like brutally hard like platformers. Anything that's like pure execution. Like my favorite game right now would be Celeste.
Yep.
And there's like accessibility reasons for that, and there's like thematic reasons, and it was like my therapy for like a good like year for a while. Just like I was just playing, and I was like I get into the zen state of, and same for like Metroid Dread when I was playing it last year or whatever. It's just like I want to like die a million times and fail until I just like am perfectly executing these really complex scenarios, because I don't have to think about inventory management. I don't have to think about collecting all the items. Like that's too much like my real work. My real work is, managing research labs and coming up with budgets and, managing projects and tracking everything. I don't want to do that. I want to sit there and just execute. Same reason why I play music as well. And when I play music, I just want to I don't find myself composing a lot. I find myself just jamming or playing and just getting better muscle memory to try and do certain licks or whatever. That's that I can, it's all about the execution. So so things like Celeste, Super Meat Boy back in the day, stuff like that. So I kind of struggle to get through things like Breath of the Wild where I enjoy it, but it's not.
There's so much there.
There's so much there, and I don't have a lot of time. But if I sit down for like a half hour, an hour, and I like crush through hard dread mode with Metroid, like that's a good time for me. And oddly enough, relaxes me, so I can like chill out and go to bed or whatever. So I tend to be all about mastery and execution with my games.
Have you played any of the Ori games?
I have not, but those are on my radar. Yeah.
So I grew up playing again Super Nintendo, so like the Donkey Kong Country games. And I played Ori a couple months ago, and I was like, this is the best experience that I've had in a platform. And I've played Celeste, and I do think it's genius. Yeah. But when I played Ori, I was like, holy crap, I'm playing Donkey Kong, but like I'm killing stuff a little bit more viciously. Cool. So I would highly recommend them, and they're gorgeous too.
I've seen some of the screen captures. That's the other one. Hollow Knight. Shout out to Hollow Knight.
If you're a masochist, play Hollow Knight. Goodness gracious, that game.
Yeah, that one actually hooked me for exploration though, just because like it had the masochism, and then like atmosphere and sound makes a big difference. So it has to have a good soundtrack as well.
Yeah, it does have a good soundtrack. I listen to game soundtracks outside of games.
Oh yeah.
So like if I'm doing the dishes, I'll put on a game soundtrack.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing the game, no.
Like it has to be completely dead silent.
Well, or just like other stuff. But like game audio. I don't remember the last time I played a game and was like, wow, this is actually like good sound, because I don't listen to it. So.
Yeah, interesting. So wait, so you completely disjoint the experience of audio and game. Like you listen to the soundtrack outside of the gaming context and you turn off the audio when you're playing the game. That's fascinating.
So the way that I know about like Final Fantasy battle themes is just because my wife will be like, okay, this is the battle theme.
Let me introduce you. This is this.
But when I'm in battle, it's like Frasier talking about opera, right?
Is it even
because
for like
it's so disconnected.
Is it even for like brand new games? That's the way you experience it, like dead out of the box. Oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been playing Darkest Dungeon. It's another great masochism game. Okay. I have no idea what it sounds like.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's I need that. I need like all the senses. Like again, multisensory. Like I need to have it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so here's I guess this will be the last thing I bring up about it, and then we'll get back to you. So when I have game memories, so like if I think about playing The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, instead of hearing the soundtrack, I hear like the starting line album that I listened to while I played it. And if I think about like Donkey Kong, I think about like other stuff. If I think about BioShock, it's like CBC Radio 2 Jazz Hour
Yeah.
and stuff, right? So like I have these really weird links because of the kind of combinations I'm putting together.
No, that's great.
And like Halo Reach, the same
Oh
thing. It
my
was
God.
CBC Radio 2. Like
That's
I have
incredible.
really strange connections because of how I kind of paired up other audio with games.
Man, like BioShock and Halo to like CBC Radio 2, especially like the Jazz Hour. That's incredible. Like
Lots of John Coltrane and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I love it.
awesome.
Yeah, like you're just like all the bebop scales flying in the background. You're just like killing Covenant. It's like okay, sure, I'm into that.
It worked really well. Is there anything that you're looking forward to? It can be either like a specific game that's coming up, or like I really want to see this feature in platformers or shooters or whatever.
I mean, any new haptic stuff coming out. So like, I'll be curious to see what Nintendo does with their follow up to the Switch whenever that happens.
Did you play around with the Nintendo Lab or Nintendo Lab, whatever it was?
I see it. I've kind of played with like whoever constructed. I never actually owned it myself. So yeah, like Nintendo's always been a lot. First of all, I'm a bit more of a Nintendo player than I am other console players, games at least. They seem a bit more avant-garde with their hardware and their interaction modalities, especially like from the Wii, Switch, etc. And especially with the Switch, the way that it's very flexible and kind of customizable, and the Nintendo Lab.
Yeah, I
can't remember the name of it.
They portmanteau it a little bit, but I don't.
Yeah,
remember
it's like Nintendo Lab or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm always excited to see what they do because it leads to more interesting interactions, and they are very, very good at in-house production and polished game experiences, right? So that kind of merges together interesting interactions with like polished experiences, which is a lot of what I'm interested in. So from like a research point of view, I'm always curious to see what they're going to do. As far as just like what games I'm looking forward to, I'm being talked into the new Pokemon one just because all my I skipped Pokemon for like years. I've only played 2 Pokemon games, Blue and Pearl for some reason.
That's a gap. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So like I don't know Gen 2 or 3 like at all, and I don't know anything since then. So it's like every 4 or 5 gens I play a Pokemon game.
See what the big.
But I'm being talked into it by my crew.
Yeah.
And I was really interested in Silk Song whenever it was going to come out.
Oh yeah, who knows?
And I've given up at this point. So at this point I'm just like whatever I can fit in. Yeah. Or exploring Ori maybe.
Yeah, go get Ori when it's on sale for Black Friday.
Have you ever thought about getting into Mario Maker and trying out that?
Yeah, if you like platformers,
like playing it, yes. Like again, like designing and creating stuff, I do not have the
obviously not the
that.
designing, but just like running through other
I should
maps that people have created, because they can like for the platforming for some of those levels, it's absolutely insane.
I should try that. I should caveat this by saying I'm not necessarily good at platformers. I just enjoy sucking and then maybe getting to the end of them. So like I might try it. I will probably fail more than a platform gamer should. Yeah.
So if someone is interested in what you're doing, maybe wants to chat, where can people find you online?
So my website is oliverschneider.ca. There are many Oliver Schneiders in this world, but I'm apparently the Canadian one.
I love that.
Yeah. And my lab website is it's uwaterloo.ca/Haptic Experience Lab. I think with dashes in between them.
Okay.
These sites should be cross-linked, so you should be able to find them either way. I'm currently still on Twitter at Oschneid. It sounds very Irish, but it's spelled Oschneid, so Germanly, but truncated. So I mean, if you search for Oliver Schneider, HCI, or Haptics, you'll probably find me. And I'm always curious. The best part of my day is talking about cool new research projects related to haptics or HCI or anything there. And so, like, if there's something in my inbox that's like, hey, here's a cool gaming haptics thing, or let's talk about this. Like, that is like, I live for that. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm in academics, because I get to just work with cool people, but cool projects all the time. So, yeah.